AppSumo, and it's going crazy right now.
Uh, CEO
Or do you remember the mic?
Oh yeah, you talked
of
to the
Abs
CEO? Really?
AppSumo.
Who is he?
Yeah,
Where is he from?
very. I don't even know. I would have to look it up, but it was very brief. It was just through a message. But it's just funny you say that because I just got done talking to him 2 days ago.
Why? What do you think? Are you doing something with them? No. Or you just
Um,
wanting to?
just
Maybe
connecting
you
about
want
events in
to. Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Nothing brewing yet, but just to connect. To be honest.
Yeah. Interesting platform. So we're using Stream Studio right now to live stream. We're doing in portrait mode. That's how you see it on your side. I've never been a guest, so I don't know what you see it on your side. You see it on portrait. You see it on vertical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see him vertical. We're like stacked on
That's
top of each other, like the Brady Bunch.
great.
You're on top, I'm on bottom.
Listen, and what's funny is that if we had a third person, then we would add them as well. So let me do a couple of things. I think the camera I'm using, it's not this one. Yeah, there you go. I got the right camera now. Okay, so quick question. It's a 30 minutes podcast, stream experience, your background. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Startup veteran. Been in the startups for almost 15 and a half years now. Had a very unique upbringing with working at one of the most prominent venture capital firms in the Midwest called Lightbank, and they were pumping out, unicorns like it was nobody's business. And my job at the time was to help with like sales and marketing and strategy. So I wasn't like a venture capitalist myself, but I got tremendous insights in a unique way
Experience,
in
sure.
the exactly
Sure.
in the early stages of building a startup. And that was my jam, and I just lived in that little 0 to 1 type of programming. And once it got past that, typically they had more money and they would hire operators and things of that nature. But anyway, people that did that for quite a while had some tremendous insights and experiences from some of the best folks that work out of there, and they spread their own wings and build their own companies, which all of us did literally, start something at one point, usually in our late 20s. So I did a couple of lifestyle businesses, mostly around I'm sorry, mostly around lifestyle and events. But I did one on hospitality with tech. All of them did pretty well. The hospitality with tech one kind of fizzled because of the landscape with COVID, unfortunately. All the bars
Mm.
and restaurants shut down. Luckily, I was also simultaneously doing these events called Startup Boot Camp, which basically was like a passion project. It wasn't even a business at the time, really. It was just me picking up and going to a different city and hosting an event for startups whenever I could, not even on like a schedule, to be honest. And that's where I originally met you, which was probably like 8 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago at this point. Over time, it
I,
became much more of a
we
business.
met. Did we meet on Clubhouse? I think we did.
No,
No, was it
no,
one of these events? Yeah. But then
no.
we did a couple of events on Clubhouse.
Yes. We did a couple
Yeah.
events on Clubhouse, but it definitely was way before Clubhouse came out.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This was in 2019, 20, 21. Early 2019, I'm gonna guess. Yeah, I'm gonna guess early 2019 is when we started chatting, and then you started coming to some events a little bit shortly after that. And then during COVID, that's when you started participating in the virtual events that we did during COVID. But anyway, you know, camp is basically essentially a go-to event experiences for early stage startups. We do it around the country. We've had some great speakers like David Sachs, founder of PayPal, along with Elon Musk. We've had founders of Constant Contact, Superhuman, DocSend, Gust, you name it. We probably had those people. Along with, we help 5,000 founders, and we've been in 20 plus cities with 400 plus testimonials of founders raving about the experience. So that's a little bit of background about myself.
So which city do you see as the one that is just boom startups right now? You don't have, in general, because you've done so many of these things. Where do you see the most activity?
It's a good question. I was asked this question yesterday, actually, on a podcast, exact same question. And I'll try and give a little bit slightly of a different answer. But this is what I would say. The two people that I'm talking to back, yesterday and today, yesterday was from Austin, today is from Miami, of course. I would say that those are probably the top two in regards to momentum. Now, that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that they're going to be unmatched exits and unmatched returns for VCs. That's not what I'm saying. But in regards to momentum, oh yeah, Miami and Austin are the top two, and I would say Miami would
I
be the
can
top one. But I've
amazing.
been to 20 plus cities in the past 2 or 3 years for this. Um, you have to mention Chicago on the rise. You have to mention Atlanta. You have to mention Dallas. There's other markets that are for sure hot, and a lot of them are coming up. But I would say momentum wise, Miami and Austin are top two.
Is is West Coast?
I don't know. To be honest, I have not been to the West Coast for these events as much as the East, Midwest, and South.
Right.
I'm actually going there next month though for the LA/OC event. So I'll let you know next month. I'll tell you.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. Listen, so what changed in this world, in the startup world? What changed? Your
Um,
opinion?
can I say everything?
Yeah.
Um, it depends. It depends on what exactly you're talking about. That's a broad question. A lot has changed. A lot is going to continue to change because that's just startup 101. Like the landscape always changes and you have to adapt. Even from a consumer standpoint, we'll look at like audio that's been popping up. Audio and video itself have been popping up. Like, look at where we're sitting right now. Look what we're doing right now. Look at Clubhouse. Look at Twitter Spaces. Look at Spotify. So those are like some of the biggest trends and changes in regards to venture capital. It was first a little frothy, and then that kind of changed over time during like COVID, and the valuations were skyrocketing, and now they're like starting to come back down and becoming a little bit more like modest. So it just depends on exactly what you're talking about, but hopefully those two give you a good broad definition of both sides of venture capital and startup side.
Should companies approach still, or I look at Clubhouse boomed right during COVID. Everybody was on it, and now you are. And I can't even get on anymore. I don't know if you're still active on Clubhouse, but anyway, should ent startup continue the hybrid model, or should face to face be the new reality again?
Yeah, I mean, both of them have very heavy pros and cons. Depending on who you ask, you can argue this to your blue in the face. I would say that a mix for me personally, preference wise, I would say a mixture of both is probably the best way to go. Having maybe some satellite offices across the country, and then of course doing face to face once or twice a week. I would say that that is the best, but there's other people that'll argue differently. Obviously, when you work remote, the biggest pro is you're able to quote unquote hold up that lifestyle that you want from a personal preference standpoint, but also from a business standpoint, especially the executives and the HR and the CEO, they get to handpick almost some of the best talent anywhere because you're not pigeonholed geographically speaking to the city that you're from with the headquarters.
That's what we do. That's
There you
exactly
go.
what we do. That is, that was always our model. It doesn't matter which part of the world they are.
Yep.
And when we first started pitching to investors, like, what? You got people in Europe, Colombia, and Argentina. Why are you doing that? We need these guys are amazing. It's top talent that we're getting, and everybody is kind of going to. So I got a question for
You
you.
know,
Go to market strategy. Go to market. How important is that? And how are startups changing their go to market strategy because of the new COVID era or post
yeah,
COVID?
yeah. Full disclosure, this is what I've done for many years in my early career go to market. So I'm a little biased when what I'm about to say, but I think it's the backbone of any startup 100%, because without a good go to market, you're going to fizzle out really quick and you're going to throw in the towel because you're not getting enough traction. And startups are already hard to begin with. So if you don't give every leg up that you possibly can to make the company successful, you will fail because you're not going to want to keep pursuing the venture. So with that said, if you don't have all the right pieces in place when you're about to go to market, you're going to flop. So what has changed? The second portion of the question, I would say this. Um, you know, uh, I think communities are really huge right now. In the past like 4 or 5 years, especially the past two, they just blew up in regards to advantage or a moat. So if you can build communities before you even launch, that is going to be a
Yeah,
huge
it's huge.
bonus, and it's going to help you climb up that hill much faster. So, for instance, like having a good Slack community, a Facebook community, or other platforms. If you have that community, which wasn't necessarily readily available 10 years ago as much, It was different 10 years
Yeah.
ago with building community, but now they give you, when I say they, I mean, I guess innovation has given us tools to make it much easier to form the communities, to post
Sure.
blogs and cool videos like this on my, Slack so everyone can see it. Beforehand, it's like an uphill battle trying to form the communities, even though it's possible, it's harder. And now technology has made it much easier for us. So if founders can master that and build community quicker, and have a good following that listens and is engaged, then whatever, whenever you launch building and whenever you launch, your go to market is going to be 10 times stronger.
And inbound marketing, how important is that as well
It's
for
super
for
important, and I
companies?
think it's super important because you need a mixture of really both. You need to have the inbound and the outbound, and that's where usually
Yeah.
the marketing team handles a lot of, that sets up the pieces in place for the inbound, and you have the sales team, the BDRs, that handle that outbound. But if you don't have a mixture of both, then the other one is going to start complaining. So your marketing department is going
Right.
to start complaining if you don't have great outbound, and then your biz dev or slash sales people are going to start complaining because you don't have great inbound. So you have to have a little bit of
Right.
both, and it needs to be
Yeah.
very
Combination.
methodical. Yeah,
Which leads on, then content creation, content strategy become important now.
always. I think you're the king of content. You and another friend of mine, slash sponsor and speaker at one of my events. He's all about content,
King of
content,
content.
content. You gotta love content, but you know what? It's great because content is what drives inbound, and that's part of the
Exactly.
marketing job, and that's what makes it easier for not only the marketing but the BDRs when they do reach outs and awareness as well. So, all of these things kind of go hand in hand. They're not exactly the same, but they scratch each other's back, so to say.
Yesterday, TikTok interviewed me, and I'm like, "Is this a fake email? Is this interview real?" And they said, "We've been following you on account, and we noticed that you use this type of strategy for your TikToks, which we think it's actually the appropriate one of how to use TikTok for business, your business and business brand into it. So we'd like to interview you." So I was on a 45 minutes interview with them, and I, wow, how interesting. I don't, and again, for us, the reason why I create content is to communicate internally with my team, my employees, different departments, and also externally to customers. But if there was not a platform like TikTok, I was not going to be able to make this 15 seconds messages per day. I try to do one or twice for internal and external communication. So content is so important, so many different levels, right? Even, they ask me, why creating content? I think if my team wants to know what I'm thinking, it's a CEO perspective of this is what I'm thinking in the morning, this is what's going on in my mind, and I'm communicating. So it's really a way for me to communicate, and that's how I'm using TikTok as an example, but even this podcast, it's another way really to connect, right? And these are technologies 10 years ago didn't exist, right? So we didn't have technology 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even TikTok was not this big or did not have all these video editing softwares before, or video editing capability, right? Now it does. It allows you to create more. That is super important. Let's talk about the investor landscape. Any thoughts? Changed? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything has changed. I think, specifically if we're talking COVID, that's one of the biggest changes. So you kind of this a little bit ago, but you were saying, I forgot who you said, but you said somebody wanted to see you guys at the same place in the office, every day instead of working remote. They thought you were crazy for hiring people remotely. That's been the mentality because old school, especially old school investors, they wanted to see founders face to face. They didn't want them dispersed and one in Florida and one in Illinois or one in New York and one in Texas. They wanted people working face to face every single day on something hard, on the solution. So with that, obviously that has been disrupted by COVID, and COVID sped up that process of old school mentality investors thinking that that's
Completely.
has to be true to now being open minded and be like, okay, well, you could have different founders from in different cities still building a really big company and a great successful company. So that's been, I think, one of the biggest changes that happened very quickly because pre-COVID it was different. Another big change for investors post-COVID is the deal flow. So now your deal flow, you got to think about that. Instead of holding 200 or 300 meetings per month that were mostly in person, geographically speaking, now you're looking at 500 to 1,000 because much more. Before COVID, I
Mm,
didn't really use Zoom that much. I probably used it 4 or 5 times before COVID. After COVID, I don't even know how many times I've used it at this point. But that
interesting.
that goes to show that founders can do the same thing with their meetings, and they can like have the meetings with investors, venture capitalists to pitch them. So now you're competing for capital versus there's pros and cons to it. The con is you're competing for capital at a wide range from almost around the world, potentially around the country, depending on their thesis. But also the pros to it is accessibility. You could pitch somebody in Washington, Seattle, and be in Arizona right now, which is pretty cool.
Right.
So those are some of the biggest differences, and of course the valuations were crazy during COVID. They kind of like this down, and then they went back up, and now they're like going like this. So it kind of went from like 2 million saves to 7 million saves to 12 million saves back to 4 million saves, and now it's like 3 million saves.
So in your opinion, the future is crowdfunding. Don't say that. Are you a fan of crowdfunding?
Is that a buzzword? Um,
Yeah. Maybe.
okay. I'm more old school and traditional because that wasn't really popular, back in the day. And by the way, again, I've been doing this for 15 years, quite some time. So it hasn't really became popular until the past, like I would say 4 or 5 years, but really in the past year after they amended those laws for the raising, I think you raise now up to
Right.
5 million, and that's what
Yep.
Gumroad did, and Arlen from Backstage Capital. So now that they changed it, I think it's a great tool to consider for funding your startup. But I will be completely honest with you and say I have limited knowledge from experiences in regards to raising capital that way, and also it just wasn't around, back when I was moving up the ranks in the startup world. So um, I think it's a
It's
great resource.
like an early stage, approach, no? Would you?
I think so. What kind of company you have, because it makes a lot of sense for certain companies and not so much about other ones.
Right,
So
right.
if you're a biotech company, probably not
Yeah, you're not going there, right?
doing it. No, if you're a deep tech, you're probably not anything, with funder or anything like that. You have to be like usually consumer facing typically.
Listen, and is why is entrepreneurship or startup so hard? It's just it's a I always say it's a journey, right?
It profession, tell you why, because there's no manual. The manual
That's right.
for super basic things, like things that are like tried and true. But when you get into the weeds, and after you create the LLC and all that jazz, when you really start going and trying to get traction, you have no clue what you're doing for the most part. So,
Right.
and every successful startup has somewhat of a unique story on how they got there, and they try and dodge a million bullets. And the name of the game is just making a bunch of decisions right. And even though you're going to make some wrong ones, if you make more right ones than wrong ones in the end, that's how you come out a winner. And the beginning stages are super hard, and that's why most startups fail, because they can't figure out how to get to product market fit, and that's because it's super hard. It's almost impossible.
What's the statistic? 10 startups in the first 3 years fails, no? Something like that. I think it's
uh, You mean succeeds? It's the other way around. Most,
yeah, I'm sorry. Please,
yeah, 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 exactly. That is correct. Because 90% of
1 out of
startups
10.
fail. 1 out of 10 make it, in year 4 or 5 and generating, 50 million a year or whatever. That would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
quote
yeah.
unquote success story, well, at least to me. But statistically speaking, yeah, it's 9 out of 10 fail.
Crazy, crazy amount. Listen, to entrepreneurs out there, what can you tell them? What's the secret sauce that you can tell them?
Yeah. Secret sauce is this: get an advisor that has been there and done that with relevant experience and that's done it lately. So you don't want someone that has been super successful, but they did something 20 years ago because shit changes all the time, as we mentioned. So you want to get someone that's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ahead of you that has good successes in a similar industry. That's the first thing. Second thing, build something that you're super passionate about. Because if you're not passionate about it and you're just trying to make some money, you will throw in the towel because it will get too hard. Like I said, it's close to impossible to have a great startup. And the third thing, create a great GTM strategy, go to market strategy. Don't just wing it. Don't just like start and just seeing what happens and throw shit at the wall, see what sticks. You literally have to be very methodical on how your go to market is set up because that will give you the leg up and get you to the next stage. Because you're not trying to become $1 billion business tomorrow. You're just trying to make it to tomorrow. And if you keep doing that day by day, at some point there's going to be a certain point where you're pushing that boulder up a hill and that boulder goes the opposite direction once it hits the peak, and that's when you get product market fit.
Amazing. Great advice. Listening to this, great advices from Phil. Events from camp, we're about 30 minutes podcast every Thursday. So tell us what's next for camp. When is the next event? When is it? Where is it? Is it hybrid?
Yeah.
No.
So we have 3 of them that are coming up on the horizon very soon. The first one is in Dallas next Saturday. It's an all-day event in Dallas, Deep Ellum. We have some great speakers. You can check out campevents.com. Camp is spelled with a K. The event after that is in Gio's hometown, is in Miami. And the theme of that is NFTs, crypto, and Web3. So it's for Miami Tech Month. We have some very heavy hitter speakers coming that know a lot about the space, and it's going to be a great day full of education, opportunity, and networking. Of course, some fun, happy hour, VIP dinner, all that. Happy to also create a code Streann. If anybody wants 15% off, I'll create the code so you can check that out and get that package. And that's
by
on
the
the
way,
23rd.
your events. What is it? April 23rd.
Yep.
Are a lot of fun. Where are you doing it? At the Lab Miami?
That is our home every month. Lab
Okay.
Miami once a month.
No,
For
fun, informative, very well organized, by the way. And I'm not just saying that you just want to leave after 30 minutes, but you're hooked on them. And Bernardo, guys, doing a great job also in putting together a great lineup for your event. So congratulations to show up. It would be great to stream at least behind, just to make noise for all the efforts that you do in our hometown. That'll be awesome. So we'll sign up for it. Yeah,
I'm down for that, man. Just let me know. Let me know. Happy to have you.
We're wrapping up right now. Anything and any other last to the people listening? So for you to know, we're gonna take this podcast that is going live right now on Facebook. Then we're gonna create micro capsules and we're gonna rotate them in different social media sites. So you're gonna see parts of this podcast popping in on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And make sure to tag you in camp as well. But any last message listening to us today?
Yeah, content is king, as Gio knows, and I think you should put that on a T-shirt and wear it. Content is king. That's number one. So definitely, check out Streann if you haven't already. Number two, come by camp, and if you're an early stage entrepreneur, come get your learn on. Come shake some hands, kiss some babies. Put yourself out there more because the people that are typically outgoing and networking have a leg up. And like I said, probably 3 times in this conversation, that's what it's about, having that leg up. So figure out how you get that leg up and execute. That's what I would say.
Fun. Thank you so much. And that from the Streann Experience. We'll see you on the next episode. Ciao for now.